Welcome to The Way the World Works, where the trusted team behind the Tuttle Twins books tackles current events, hot topics, and fun ideas to help your family find clarity in a world full of confusion.
Hi, Katie.
Hey, Brittany.
So I love words. I think our listeners know that because I love dissecting words. I love talking about words. And obviously, I'm a writer. That's what I do for my profession. Katie, you do writing as well.
Yes.
Even when I'm not writing for political or legal reasons, I write comedy and things like that. So words are my life. I also talk a lot. So words are my life. But I think a lot about words and their meaning and how that meaning can not only change, but how it can also be used to manipulate people, to kind of control them. And so I thought this would be an interesting topic. It's also if you get the Tuttle Twins newsletter, which if you don't subscribe to that, it's great. Connor sends out, I think it's weekly, even just little thoughts he's having, and he did one on liberal linguistics, which is interesting because the word liberal in general, we've done another episode on this, so I won't go too much on this, but how the word liberal now means somebody on the left, right? Someone progressive, but the word liberalism, like Mises wrote a book called Liberalism because liberalism used to be like our side. It used to be free markets. It used to be, free speech, all this stuff. And then the words got twisted and people now, it means something else than it used to mean. And so I know, Katie, you have some thoughts on this. Do you want to share kind of your thoughts on this, and then we can just kind of take it back and forth, have
Yeah.
a conversation? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned liberal, and I know we did it again, but just as a refresher, you know, liberal once meant someone who believed in freedom of choice and action and who would champion the free market. And I don't know that you can get more opposite. Like that word has completely flipped to mean something totally different than it did before. Um, just I want to give two more examples that Connor gave in this email because I thought they were such cool examples. One is the word awful, which used to mean something that was worthy of awe or deep respect or fear. And now it means something that's like just bad. And we almost use it really lightly, like, oh my gosh, my day was awful because, they were out of my favorite drink at the grocery store. But it used to mean something that inspired awe. And so that word has completely changed. And then another example he gave was the word nice, which used to mean foolish or ignorant. And I think that's a huge, switch also. And so it's interesting because what I always take away from these is, and honestly, using liberal and using the examples of awful and nice, there is a natural evolution of language where
Hmm.
over time words just start to take on new meanings. And that is something that happens gradually, and you can kind of trace where that happens along the way and how it evolves. And then there's an unnatural language evolution, or maybe an imposition where new words are imposed on us. And I think people don't always realize that. And I think that maybe with the word liberal also, right? So where there's an effort to change what words mean purposefully, and it's
Yes.
usually, done for political reasons, or to gain control or to capture, we say, like, capture the narrative. But I think that that's what we see a lot of now, is this using language as a weapon, weaponizing language to take words that once meant something and make them either mean nothing, just rob them of all meaning because we overuse them or we make their meanings too broad, or to make them mean something that they don't actually mean. And that makes things a little bit confusing.
Yeah, and I think purposefully, I think, is the key word here, right? It makes them
Mhm.
purposefully confusing. I think we've talked about very briefly critical race theory, and we don't need to go into that here. But part of this critical theorist, this movement to kind of change what people think, is to manipulate words, right? Because words have a there's a line from V for Vendetta about words have I can't remember. It was like this profound quote, and I'm like, oh nope, I forgot it. Words are important, is what the quote is. Something prettier than sounding than that. But that they like, for example, domestic terrorists. When we hear the word terrorist, our brain automatically goes to something terrible, right? It goes to somebody who's willing to hurt somebody for any cause.
Mhm.
Now, when that happened during 9/11, we had terrorism and things like that, that left this really fearful image in all of our minds. And even today, when we hear that word, we get that kind of fear of, oh, that's a bad thing. Now, about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, there became this trend of people calling parents who stood up to school boards because they didn't like things that were being taught in school that weren't appropriate, or people teaching things that, like, if you're white, you're a bad person, things like that. If you stood up for this, if you said, I didn't want my kid to hear this in school, you were labeled a domestic terrorist. Imagine calling a
Mhm.
parent at a school board meeting a domestic terrorist, right? But these words matter, and now all of a sudden you're creating an enemy out of someone. And so, like, it's crazy what these words do. The word vaccination during the pandemic was changed because it
Mhm.
used to mean, and I'm going to butcher this, it used to be something, I can't remember. Basically, they changed it to fit the narrative they wanted to push. And then they also changed the term of, like, anti vaxxer, right? All this stuff
Mhm.
to manipulate the masses. And these are just this little, they all start with changing a word or changing the meaning of a word. It's crazy.
Well, and I just saw something the other day where they were interviewing people on the street, and they're saying, "Well, do you agree with book banning? Do you like book banning? Do you support it?" And everyone obviously was like, "No, books should never be banned." And this person said, "Okay." And they had with them a bunch of content from public school libraries that was very graphic, very inappropriate by almost any standard. Stuff that should have been taught, by parents or just really not taught at all. And so then they had these people take these books and read them out loud, and these adults who were like, I would, book banning is always wrong. Um, they were reading these books, and they were, not able to finish, and they were shocked and embarrassed. And what the point that they made was like, okay, so they're calling parents who don't want to have these in schools, those are book banners. But you're like, okay, but this isn't the same as banning To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yes,
This
yeah.
is saying this is not an appropriate material for my child to have access to. But they've been able to make it look like these parents are hate filled or intolerant or book banners, but really they're like, hey, my kids don't get to see that stuff. And so when these people were kind of pushed on it, they were like, yeah, absolutely, this book should be banned.
Yeah.
But how often do things get labeled something only to manipulate people into thinking about them in a certain way, and as a way to obscure the truth about what that thing is.
No, and it's funny to me you mentioned that. I don't know if you followed I always say his name wrong. It's like Roald Dahl, right? Isn't that his name?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Roll yeah, I thought it was like Ronald my whole life, and then I just found out it wasn't, my mind was blown. So he wrote, like, Matilda, he wrote
Mhm.
Willy
The
Wonka, I think he
witches.
wrote Matilda, yeah, The Witches, that movie used to scare me as a kid. He wrote all these great books, Big Friendly Giant, he wrote all these great
Mhm.
books, and then he's been dead for years now, but now they've come around and said, like, "Oh, he said the word fat in one of his books, we have to change that so kids won't get mad." And what they changed it to was, like, they changed fat to, like, grand, or they changed it to something that literally means the same thing, and it actually kinda sounds worse, but they
Yeah.
felt good changing it. Or it's
Mhm.
kind of like we're not supposed to call homeless people homeless anymore. We're supposed to
Oh.
call them unhoused, which
And, like,
cracks me
they
up.
don't care, they just want a house. Like,
Yeah, they
what.
don't care. Exactly, they don't care. And so it's funny, though, because now it's like it's just this little manipulation of words and what they mean, and one word, homeless, is offensive, but unhoused isn't, when it literally is the same thing. It's crazy to me what you can do with that.
Well, and we see them doing it, and it is nefarious. And I think it's interesting, like Connor in this email that he sent out, he says something interesting. I'm just gonna read it for just a second, but he says, words are powerful. They shape our thoughts and beliefs. When their meanings are distorted, our understanding of important concepts like liberty and justice becomes clouded. This shift isn't a recent phenomenon. The left has long been playing a game of linguistic chess, carefully maneuvering words to shape public opinion. And then he says it erodes the foundation of honest discourse and leaves us debating shadows rather than substance. And I think that's really true. Like when we take the meaning away from words, and we make it so that um, no one really understands what we're talking about, it's really hard to actually debate ideas. And so confusing people with words,
Oh,
changing the
because then they're
meanings.
just debating the word. That's a really good point.
Right. Right. Like, do you
Yeah.
remember for like 3 seconds, the term woke meant
Good. It was
people
something
like
good.
us.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm so glad you remember that because my friend and mentor, Dan Sanchez, he we've
Yeah.
had on the show. He and
Mhm.
I remember we were sitting in the fee office and we were talking about Jordan Peterson. We're like, oh, like he's woke because he listens to Jordan Peterson. And woke was like, yeah, he's one of us. And now I think that word got switched to based for a little bit. Then it
Yeah.
became like, oh, they're based. And even that got a little co-opted by other people now. But
Mhm.
yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. I was trying to tell somebody that the other day. Woke used to mean like, oh yeah, you're one of us. And now it's the complete opposite.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I'm glad too, because I was thinking it was like one of those Mandela effects.
Yes,
Like, did I dream that?
Katie. I literally was telling somebody the other day, I'm like, wait, was I wrong? But no, I know clearly, like, that was what I used to, like, the intellectual dark web, when that was really big and that was happening. I used to refer to those people as woke, and that was like the lingo. And now it means
Yes.
something so different. So,
Yes. Yes. Okay,
no,
good.
that's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
and as I think as writers and as communicators, because that's, what I think the umbrella of what you and I do and all the work we do is we work in communications. That's what we
Mhm.
do. And words are so important to that. And it's hard to do that, when we're going up against the changing of meanings and all the time. And it
Mhm.
also makes me wonder, when we read an older book,
Mhm.
what things meant then. That's something that I always, because sometimes I'll read a word in a sentence and I'll be like, that doesn't seem to make sense. And I'll go back. And my constitutional law professor, when I was doing my undergrad, we had an amazing professor there who taught undergrads more about the Constitution than most people ever learn. But he would always have us use an 18th or 18th century dictionary. So
Mm.
when we would be reading these letters from the founders and all this stuff, we would use an 18th century dictionary. So we knew what the words were in their day,
You
because
knew
it's
what awful
crazy.
meant.
Yeah. So, well, I didn't know that one. Yeah. But no, I should have. Yeah. So it's just crazy to me because it's fascinating. I love it. But it's also something you need to be aware of because it is how we get manipulated.
It is, and it isn't an accident, and I think that's the most important thing, and I think we've touched on it on a couple of other episodes already, but it's words like tolerant, it's words like kindness. Those are good words. Those words
Mm-hmm.
are moral words that we should try to work into our character. However, the way that they're used is neither kind nor tolerant. And it's on purpose that those words have been chosen to divide and to you know to what is the word I'm looking for? uh what is
I
the
don't
word?
know.
Oh, prejudice, right?
Okay.
To prejudice one group of people against another. And we frame it all under these, well, we're tolerant, and that means that we're allowed to hate everyone who isn't like us. And you're like, wait, I didn't think that's what tolerant actually meant.
No. Yeah. No, it doesn't. Ugh. It's a crazy world we live in, but I mean, I think it's just a reminder. We'll wrap this up here. Is that your language is so important, and I talk about Jordan Peterson a lot. Our listeners already know that, but be precise in your language is one of his 12 rules. And
Hmm.
as a writer, again, I think that's so important because if you want to communicate your ideas carefully, you have to know what you're talking about and make it less confusing for other people, because there's a little homework assignment for you. Maybe go find some words that have changed over time. That would be a really fun, discussion to have with your families. But
Well, and I think champion language also, like
yes,
within your homes, parents, when you see something, on TV and media, when you hear your kids using words in ways that you realize maybe have been co-opted, tell them, like, talk about it so that this is something that people are aware of and can actively, fight and work against because it matters.
it matters. Exactly. Well, we will leave it there, guys. Please, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast and share with friends. And until next time, we will talk to you later.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Way the World Works. Make sure your family is subscribed and check out TuttleTwins.com for more awesome content.